Yeah, so look, absolutely. As you guys might know, I've partnered with MindGuard. This is an around the critical risk platform. This isn't a sell to that, but it's certainly talking about what we've learnt on the journey. Because I'm seeing lots of people doing lots of things, and people on the line might be doing lots of things as well. And maybe that's a nice segue already. So how can we learn collectively? How can this pack maybe help guide some things or throw out some considerations in this space? So we have a fair few people on the line. So now we've got the first question, because it always needs to be interactive. Um, if you're currently doing, if you're currently using AI in critical control management, critical risk management, anything in that word, single fatality prevention, multi-fatality prevention, what are you doing? What are you seeing? Or if you're not currently doing something, have you seen some stuff? Are you participating in some stuff? Throw something in the chat. Tim, how do we overlay consultation? Yeah, maybe we can unpack that one, mate. That's a good one. I've had some interesting conversations with the regulator on that. So that's the first question, everyone. What are you doing, or are you doing anything, or is your organization doing anything in relation to using these different tools around critical trial? Mr. Bryant's gone first. Thank you. Currently using AI to review question sets so more aligned effectiveness rather than question, and using it to look for patterns in the critical trial fail data. Okay, so we've got some design of question set, so verification question set, and interrogation of the outputs of that. Obviously, that's the bane of people that look at lots of data. Thank you. What are some other people doing or seeing? That's a useful one. Thanks, Josh. Because I could riff, but I'm really curious. I'm sure there's people on the line have dabbled or done some things, maybe in their own personal GPTs or maybe through the more formal mechanisms. Thanks, Tim Fillon, writing the critical risk but struggling to engage the foreign ownership population of the detail that sits behind it. Okay, so it's good at, I guess, front end loading and drafting, but obviously still can't do that bit where we magically engage people and get people on board. Thanks, mate. Jared, we have had a risk register for several years. A lack of oversight has caused it to grow to be excessively large and inconsistent. That doesn't sound familiar at all. So I've attempted to use AI to reconcile data and pull key themes. I wonder how many lines is in that risk register. That would be interesting. Thank you. That's very useful. And maybe if people aren't already doing that. Caitlin, using AI to develop and review lists of causes, double check for blind spots and risk profiles. Yeah, that's really useful. And I can talk about how we've done some stuff in that space as well. One more. Has anyone else done some stuff here? This is all helpful and some good tips for people. Adam, benchmarking against external organizations, consider internal processes which have not identified. Okay. So I'm going to extrapolate from that maybe some risks which haven't been identified. Toby A, review risk scenarios using self-defined criteria. I love that. Mo, depending on the organization's IT, Microsoft Power Automate can help with this task. Is that Mo, the Mo that I remember from Anglo? Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so we're doing some stuff. Okay. So if we think about critical risk management, and obviously I almost live and breathe this and do lots of projects and lots of different things, it's a fair bit of time. Yep. Now, if you're not a designer of these systems, you might be a user of these systems. And some people have already shared here that, they have been seeing, okay, through the risk registers, develop of question sets. And we can see here some specific examples here. So drafting, and I think a few people made reference to drafting of that. And I've certainly used lots of different platforms to see, well, how can we draft a bow tie, draft a performance standard, draft a verification set to varying levels of success and failure. I think you've probably seen this about standardization. And this is a question to go over here on the right while I'm still just unpacking these things. If you're doing some stuff where you're spending a lot of the time, doesn't matter if it's around AI or not, but if your organization's doing work in critical risk or single fatality, multi-fatality risk prevention, where you're spending a fair bit of time on that. So you can drop something in the chat there. So standardization, I think someone maybe even talked to, I've seen some people do, safety management system documentation. And can we standardize the language and have that consistency there, and even the the readability level, moving it to like, what is it, grade 8 level, as opposed to something more than that. A few people already talked about cross-referencing. I think Caitlin and Toby, and I think even Adam might have mentioned about that. So benchmarking, cross-referencing, I definitely use that a lot. And also, okay, can you take this thing and give me something that I can use straight away? Classic example, probably presentations. So on the right-hand side there, is anyone, where are people spending a bit of time there? Is anyone, when you look at that, not in relation to AI, but in your organization, which one is consuming the most labor or the most time intensive for you or your particular business? Is there one that sort of pops out there? Give everyone sort of 15 seconds to drop something in. Which one of those is the most time, what do you call it? Resource intensive. Maybe no one's doing anything. I'll keep an eye on the chat there. All right. Adam, drafting performance standards. Awesome. Thank you, mate. Yes, I've lived and breathed that, and can take a lot of time. Introducing Protect, definitely the design and performance standards. Love that. Narelle QA. Hey, thank you, Narelle. Yep. So running the layer of it. Josh done the same thing. Thank you. Awesome. All right. So a lot of you know me. These are the guys I've partnered with. They are the brains trust in that critical risk AI platform. I've learned a lot, and certainly today I'll give you my experience base on this journey and working with these guys and what's being created. But certainly there'll be some stuff that Jem does and can answer that blows my mind when I can't even keep up. Tried to do that last week in Perth and no chance. All right. So there's I guess some principles straight away, and maybe some people are already doing in this space about the right way we can use it, and maybe the less ideal way, and the way that it can be unhelpful or put us into a position where it's not helpful. So we've already talked about drafting. I love that. And it's almost, well, it's done a lot of our business. We've had to pivot because what used to take us 3 days to do, it can probably be done in 2 hours. Again, with the right guardrails. I like to use the term guardrails there. The quality checks, we talked about that, and translation. And this has been a really powerful one too. So, what's the opportunity gain where we have these technical artifacts that are produced from a critical control management process? How can we produce something that's useful for the frontline worker? And that can take some time. And I've got an example of that a little bit later. And then the right-hand side there, yes, if we think it can replace the human, Tim, fill in some standards and templates, simple CVVs. Thanks, mate. Thank you. You've already jumped ahead for that chat question there, which describes your current use, and it might merge into a little bit. So certainly, what would be unhelpful is that this is the final decision maker, and that might come back to Tim Fitch's question there about consultation, or point or potential question around consultation. So definitely in the platform that these guys have built, or that we've built, we have a human toll gate at each phase, at each stage. At no point can things be produced without a QA by a person, which then dovetails into the human oversight. And I've had some interesting conversations. So if these things can do what we used to do quicker and more efficient, then where within the business is the knowledge base that can quality check this? I don't know. But potentially it's pretty useful to still have within the business. Okay. Making sure I'm still there. All right. A replacement for SME review and approval. Yeah. Interesting that I've had some interesting conversation with the regulator, but it doesn't replace that consultation piece. Now, it would be rhetorical question. What is the need for consultation? Is it now more around just change management as opposed to technical input if these things are starting to learn over time. Maybe someone might have some insights on that. All right, so if we think about bow ties, so I don't know if anyone mentioned yet. So I think one person might have mentioned about you can use it to create a bow tie. I've tried lots of different ways and had lots of different positive successes. So what you can see here is some suggestions around how you can get it produced with some guardrails in place and without that quality loss. So context, absolutely, and we would expect to do this anyway. So if you say, create me a bow tie for this, then you'll get a vanilla bow tie that likely doesn't suit the context of your business. But I know Tim Fitch, so you're in marine up in North Queensland, which might be significantly different to a large iron ore mine in Western Australia. And without somehow giving it more context, who knows what we get. So context is key. And if anyone has some pointers on context, then feel free to drop it in the chat. Force format, force the structure. And I don't know if you've even tried that. Okay, write me a bow tie, and it just gives you a whole paragraph. So we need to start to build that in as well. Yes, tables. I love tables, not the narrative. I get frustrated about that. So okay, give it to me in this particular format and the quality check. And I think a few people already talked about that. How do we quality check? Can it quality check itself? Or we give some insights into that. No one's dropped something in the chat. All right, so question down the bottom. If you could use AI to produce you a bow tie that ticks all of these boxes, and instead of taking your organization maybe 4 days, takes, I don't know, 10 minutes, what's the risk that would be top of list, top of mind, the one most pertinent for your business? Just throw something in the chat there. What's the heavy hitter? And the guys have a little mini prompt there, which you can see about that. Tim Fillon, you got HV electric. Ian, you got lifting. Yeah, that can sometimes get a bit curly. Certainly, even what is the scope of lifting? Where does it start? Where does it stop? What do some other people have? If you could choose one, say, hey, just produce me something that is this risk. It's a real Toby Consultation bypasses ISO. Yeah. Thanks, Toby. It is an interesting one, that one. I haven't solved it. I've got some ideas. Caitlin, full of ground. Yeah, it's a pretty complex one, isn't it? And be really interesting to be able to use this to maybe better produce and better stratify your bow ties. Has anyone got something else? Here we got Peter, Steve, Yuri, Joel. Is there another one that comes to mind? The other Darren Maxwell? Narelle, working over water. Okay, that's an interesting one. And so potentially sometimes we can identify some risks we haven't yet bow tied or isn't a full knowledge base within our business, and we can use that to help. Thanks, Peter. Vehicles and mobile equipment. Darren's mobile equipment as well. And Bob's hazardous materials. Yeah, nice. Thank you. All right, let's keep rolling on. All right, so we talked about bow ties, how it can help, and performance standards or performance criteria. So for those, if that's a new term or an unfamiliar term, that's the idea where we have a critical control. We've done the work to say this is something that's really, really important for our business. Now we are going to define, put some effort into how we want this to perform over time. And part of that is what assurance will we do, or what verification will we do back against that criteria so we know it's operating. Look, and I've been right down the rabbit hole in these areas. And so same again, write me a performance standard. And if we don't give it some guardrails, you'll get what you get. And certainly what you see here, and this has come from our technical base as well, a lot of that critical risk training and technical resources that we have, here is what we suggest are some aspects or some factors that you could, well, I would say should, but you could consider when you're pulling this together. a classic one is, have I got it in here? Yeah, measurable criteria. So we're very good at writing question sets, but if I have this question set, okay, go out and check this. Have we said, well, what constitutes a pass and what constitutes a fail? And if we haven't, then it's useful to say, okay, well, write me this question set and also include criteria for a pass and criteria for a fail. And it might ask you some more clarifying questions. So on this list, actually, it's a question for everyone. For those that have done some stuff in performance standards, is there anything on this list that is missing within your own performance standard makeup at the moment? And this could either be if you're using AI or not AI. Just throw something in the chat there. If there's a prompt here, you go, okay, we could probably add that in. Evidence is another classic, isn't it? Well, okay, go off and check this, but what evidence do you want retained to demonstrate the value that was returned? I mean, hopefully people have tarps set up. And this is an interesting one in Queensland mining at the moment because there's been a legislation change now where critical controls are required to be embedded as part of the safety management system and the risk management system. And then there's some interesting wording that's floating around about if a critical control is classed as fail, then withdraw people from the area where the risk is prevalent. Which is from an intent perspective, absolutely, completely agree with. Where it gets a little bit more murky is, well, what is classed as a critical control failure versus an erosion, or it's slightly off track, or it's degraded a little bit. And my suggestion has been to a few people in that space is if to build out tarps, to build in some criteria of what are some states before failure, potentially can help in that. Tim Phelan, maybe the timing of the assessments or discovery of the control failure assessments. Actually, I didn't even talk about that scheduling. So I won't get on the soapbox, but there's certainly, we can use AI to have a structured assurance plan where we can use some science and we can use our risk profile to support that. All right, so that's around performance standards. A lot of me talking. Let's go the next one down. Okay, now we get a bit more tactical around verification. So this is actually the detail, and it's very similar to the previous slide there, but we did make reference, Tim, can we start to use the AI to give us the risk-based scheduling? Toby A, getting some help from AI for the first CET will also be helpful, 100%. So CET, for those who don't know that term, that's control effectiveness test, probably another term to test a critical control. So there's an opportunity here for us to move beyond, and there's a lot of questions I always ask. So if an organization has set up that we're going to check this thing every 3 months, my straightaway question is, well, where did that 3 months come from? We're going to check three widgets every 3 months. Where did that come from? And oftentimes it's people's best guess, and it's in the absence of any other criteria. This is what we think, and certainly we can use the AI. And there's some Australian standard for sampling. Well, that's what we use, where we can take more of a risk-based view. So we're not boiling the ocean where we don't need to, and we can get more targeted. So absolutely, 100% recommend. If you're not looking at that, that would be something to look at. I'm not going to get on my soapbox about this one. I see time and time again, verifications check frontline on the job, on the day things, which in reality, we have 3 or 4 other layers also check those things. To me, an opportunity for verifications is to check the systems that sit behind on the job on the day. And we can get smart around that as well. All right, so some words there. Everyone will get a copy of the slide pack you can come back to. All right, now we've got a bit about the standardization. I think a few people have talked about this. So detect duplicates. So we've done a fair bit of work in this. So let's say we now have 100 critical controls within our business. And we have then, each of those critical controls might have 2 critical control verification question sets, so let's say 3, so we might have 300 critical control verification question sets. We can fairly quickly use AI to crawl through all of those different deliverables to, one, I'll say check for duplication, and then 2, which isn't on here, I don't think, just as important, is I would like to check for synergization. So where can we combine some question sets? We're not just creating 300 new bits of stuff that we're adding to the organization. So we've done a fair bit of work in that space. Yep, alignment, action less. Yeah, the weak language. Okay, you can read all of those things as well. I'm not going to dovetail on that. This one is pretty important. So we know, I think Caitlin even mentioned the International Council of Mining Metals has a framework for critical control management, critical risk management. They've got particular language on what a control is versus support activity and a monitoring activity. If we build that into the AI, it can just look across all of our deliverables to make sure those quality assurance principles are still in place. So it'll look at your bow tie and say, actually, you called that a control. It's not. That's actually a support activity. And also conversely, we can look at, are we doing critical control effectiveness checks on things that aren't controls in the first place? Okay. So who has had one of these? If we've all played around with this, if you've had all 5, which one? Peter, straight away, all of them. Who else? You guys can read that. I'm interested in what one are you seeing at the moment, or is it trending? Is it changing? Peter, you've had all of them and hallucinations. Mr. Bryant, I'm sure you've played a lot in this world. Anyone had some of these things? Change drift. Thanks, Brad. Narelle, all of them as well. The traceability, maybe it's not directly related, but this is important, isn't it? And this is it comes back to the importance of a human toll gate. If we're using this thing to magic create all this stuff, where is it coming from? How did we get to this point in time? And certainly the critical risk management framework I can't remember, it sort of builds upon itself, and you can always go backwards and forwards to see how it all links up. The thing we don't want to have happen is we end up in a place and we can't work out how we got here. Caitlin, hallucination struggles to grasp a deep knowledge of the operation, e.g. underground metal. Yeah, yep, absolutely. Josh, yeah, data governance and corrupting data. Thank you. Change drift. So yeah, even the guys, that built the critical risk AI platform that they've talked about, every day there needs to be I think the word is refresh. Forgive me if that's not the right term, because they've seen it can drift over time. The standards can drift, and we need to be on top of that. And they build out all of these things to make sure. Data governance, where the input go, who can see it? Yeah, we've talked about this. So we want to be absolutely careful. We don't have any of these things propping. Okay, so if you, at the start of your journey, maybe you're continuing in. So what's some practical things we can do or consider straight away? You can start doing today. Don't need a fancy platform. Here's some of the tips from the team. And I mentioned this one. Yep. If we say that the AI is for draft and humans finish, or humans QA, or human tollgate, I feel that's an effective way straight away. We save ourselves some time, but we also are the gatekeepers for what's finally produced. I mentioned before, and it wouldn't be that hard to do it, and probably some people have already done that. Give it the clear definitions and the standard, the quality assurance. Here is binary, and then just let it run that across everything that's being produced, or integrate that as part of everything that's being produced, which AI platforms or combinations. Maybe we can come back to that one, Tim. So I'm sure your business maybe even has these limits. Does anyone have a rule where you can't use ChatGPT or similar, any of those external platforms? Has anyone's business got one of those? Just drop a thing in the chat if you do. I know a fair few do. Brad, well, absolutely for you guys. Ian, yes, no, GPT, use allowed. Anyone else like that? Tim, Dylan, we have a standard. That'd be interesting. Wonder if the AI wrote the standard. Anyone else have those things? So we've got these pretty powerful platforms. Tim, limited platforms. Josh, whatever works. Nice. Love that. I'm sure you've tried just about everything. So we absolutely need to be very careful with our sensitive there. Peter, using Copilot internal, which uses models, but comes back through this single, but yes. Mo, yes, all the tools except approved internal tool. That's interesting. I'm not an expert in that world, but as I understand it, once the sensitive information's gone out, it's gone out. Narelle, yes, absolutely. So we want to be very, very careful around that. And then the audit trail. How did we get to where we got to? What principles were applied? Joel, no GPT, must use Copilot and its agents. Nice. Thank you. Okay. So, and maybe Josh, you had this within your business. So this is about how do we get consistent outputs? Because if everyone uses AI, how do we get that consistency? Because we can imagine there's a lot of maybe rules you set up, some parameters you've been using, and if someone else in your business tried to do the same thing, would they get the same result? Most likely not. And I don't know if has anyone had any of this happen within their own business? Yes, we've had some great results, and then someone else does something, and we can end up with some things which then take us backwards. Josh, training, giving a body of knowledge lockdown instruction set. Yeah, awesome. Very, very similar to what the guys have done. Has anyone else had any of these things eventuate within their business? You might be awesome. Someone else tries something, or your boss has a crack, and then we go, oh, it's too hard. Didn't work. Let's just go back to the start in the first place. Keep an eye on the chat. Absolutely, we don't want to have these things happen within our business. Let's see what's happening. All right. So I'm going to jump out of this screen and jump into a different screen. So how do we reverse engineer that? How do we scale? How do we build in all of these rule sets? How do we have consistency? How do we have human toll gates? How do we not have hallucination and all of those aspects? Obviously, definitely it's around prompts. And this is what the guys, you can read the words. I don't want to read the words there. You can take this back with you. And what I'll show you is an example of a system where the guys have built this out just to show a possibility of where it can get to, which is, well, in my view, pretty exciting in this space. So one after this. Okay. So I'm going to change. I've just got my tabs up. So again, my purpose in showing this is just an example of what can be built out with a bit of time and effort. And this is around going from bow ties all the way through to performance standards with the human toll gates, building in the question sets and all of this sort of stuff. So this platform is Critical Risk AI. So I can start in here, I can have a collection of bow ties. If my organization has a group, I can go group level. If I've just got a site level, and pretty much dashboards and all this. I've just got a light touch. I've only got 2 bow ties in here at the moment. So this is one which I really, really like. And I think it might have been Caitlin before talked about, can the AI understand the context of my business to then help give me better outputs? So, for example, what the guys have been able to build is again building up all of the library to then give it some context. Okay, if someone chooses mining open cut, well, this is what it means. But also, what if I then add to that what my jurisdiction is, then as part of the ingestion process, it will go and crawl all of the databases and risk libraries and critical control libraries and incidents and history of incidents relative to that jurisdiction and relative to that industry. And also, if it's just a generic risk, it'll cross-reference against the library. Even some rules around which we know if people get the center of the knot of a bow tie wrong, then we end up in a really bad position. So there's, even if I come in and want to do something on, I don't know, working at heights, then we know working at heights isn't a risk, working at heights is an activity. And it will run the QA to go, actually, your risk is fall from height. That's the unwanted event. We can then upload all of our info and we can scope. So this is another thing which helps context. So what is in scope and what's out of scope. And if you can build in the rule sets, then it will say, say for example here, it will say, okay, well, anything to do with underground development headings will not appear in the bow tie or any of those controls associated with that or risks associated with that. You can add plant equipment activities. Again, what is done as part of this is, which is why I said at the start, it's putting my standard business model out of our front end loading by people is pretty much redundant, because it can just take all of your existing procedures, risk assessments, whatever it is related to, let's say, fall from height, give it to the machine. It will then upload it, ingest it, suggest the scope based on what's already in there, suggest scenarios. So you upload your history of incidents. It'll say, okay, well, you've actually had this, all of your evidence thing. It can look at guidance notes. I give it all of that. I won't do that AI query. And pretty much you can then click generate bow tie. And like I said before, it will then go and crawl through databases, legislation, regulation, history of incidents related to that to then produce an example bow tie. And again, the guys have done a lot of work in this, but this example is here's in the bow tie has a source. So where did this come from? Okay, it came from a standard, or it came from an incident, all of those things there. You can see in here already, talked about building out the language of, what's control versus verification activity versus support activity. If we build in the rules, the AI can automatically do that for us. So we have a neater bow tie that's returned. We're not having this thing with lots of noise, as an example. Again, I don't want to spend too mind because it's not about demo here, but this is just some examples. I'll jump into the next one. So that previous screen, so this is like a draft one where it says, okay, based on all of industry, based on all of your stuff, here is a first draft bow tie. Go through and add to or take off things that don't apply. And this is one thing which is really useful, is you can bring in from external databases. I think someone mentioned before, how do we learn more? Well, we can bring in external information for validation. So it could be a control that is present within the industry. Your business doesn't know. It might appear here on the bow tie, and then it's up to you. Do you want to accept that? And if you accept that, then there'll be an action to go off and do that within the business. So let's say you've done all that work. This is what I like now. Again, if you can build out all of the aspects, we can start to quantify the health. How we do critical or we do control effectiveness scoring. It can quantify that based on, you can see that there, robustness, criticality, independence, verifiability to start develop an overall score. And then you can set a threshold for what score you want to consider for a critical control versus below which is not. So this will then take care of the admin controls and the PPEs and all of that sort of stuff, the stuff we intuitively know maybe potentially is not a critical control. The AI does it all for us to get this to a position of a bow tie like this. And this is, for example, what you would then sit with your cross-section, your consultation, to then walk through, line by line. You might still want to add, subtract, change some things, but doing all of this, I'll do this quickly because I don't want to spend too much time here. Just going to move my down. Here we go. So let's say we've done our bow tie. We then end up with our critical controls with all of our scoring. Obviously, then, if you went and talked to some people, you have your sign-on sheets and when did it happen and blah, 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 blah. Gives you a nice summary here, a breakdown of our different critical controls by type. And the one that we guys recently built, and this is one that I really love, is we can then use the AI to build out our performance standards. And I know a few people on the line have been playing in this space. So if I have anything in my safety management system or my business around this control, which could then inform a critical control verification. So for example, I did one, was around working at heights and EWPs, and I took the Australian Code of Practice for EWPs and I attached it to say, we'll use this as a reference source to help me build out what my critical control performance requirements will be. So it'll take that, ingest it, and then return the value on, what's the requirement for functionality, what do you do as a support activity, ownership. Again, all these are editable, and then the source. So where did this all come from? Keeping this really quick. We talked about before about understanding failure modes. Again, it'll get that from your information. You don't need to do this hard work creating from scratch, which is what I used to do. Failure modes, trigger action response plans, and the one which is really, really important, which everyone's been struggling with, is building out our verification question set. So it'll map it against all of our requirements and then say, well, this is what to check by when, this is what good or bad looks like. Here's who should do it, just as a starting point. Then you go through and do the validation with the SME and get that done. And then what I mentioned before, let's say if we have 300 of these, then the AI will do a volume check to look at, well, where do we have duplication across our 300 critical control verifications? Where are we already, checking something on antennas and radar sensors? And if we're already doing something, here's the duplication. What are we building in our system so we only need to do it once? So there's that synergization piece as well. Then the last one, and remember I mentioned about the translation. Again, what the guys built out, which I think is really neat, is at the click of a button. Remember how we talk about, we don't want to give people a critical control performance standard. What can we give them? This is where the AI can then come in, interrogate, and this is what the guys built out on this platform, a one-touch button push around a critical control, which I think is very powerful. I was pretty surprised when they could do that. So this actually makes it a little bit more relevant to the frontline, doesn't it, than this view. Okay, I'll come back to Mo's question. So look, that's all I wanted to show is just an example there of what can be built out that built in those different parameters. There's a little bit of stuff there. Yeah, Josh, absolutely. The infographic, when I saw that, it just blew my mind. And also the guys have they also have a module for pretty much ICAMs, which again, just automates everything and it pumps out an infographic straight away without any human, well, obviously a human toll gate. Right, so we're going to get to Q&A or key points, actually. No, key takeaways. So yeah, the guys have got a whole enterprise platform. It's not about that. All right, so we've been through a lot. Back to everyone on the line. We've got a little bit of time. So what's a one key learning or key takeaway? It has been a lot of talking from my end, and it's a bit vanilla. But let's spend some time now. What is a key idea, a key learning, a key takeaway for you from this? Was there an aha moment? Might have been something in the chat, some people said. So let's give everyone 30 seconds. We've got a few people. So Adam, Alison, Andrew, throw something in. Bob, Brad, Brian, Caitlin, Darren. Who else? Ian, Jake, Jared, Joel, Josh, Mike, Mo, Narelle, Neil, Peter, Tim and Tim, Toby, Yuri. What do we got here? Tim, we drive the process, stepping back and putting thought into the outputs. Yeah, nice, Tim. Caitlin, need to dedicate some time to build out the dictionary. 100%. Yeah, that's a great one. So let that do it once and do it well. Well, maybe it's not once, but do it well and then let that do its thing. Josh, measurable criteria, pass and fail, and the response for fail versus, yeah, thanks, Josh. Who else? What's another key takeaway from people? Even if you don't have a platform or you're dabbling, there was some ideas of what you can do even from today. So who else has got something there? Peter, good to see other people within the industry identifying the same issues. Nice to move back to a centralized approach rather than moving off in silos. Yeah, nice one, Peter. That is good. And that's certainly the fear, isn't it? We could end up in a whole place where we don't really want to be as an industry. Be good to use this tool for the betterment of everyone. Who else we got on here? Joel, Jared, Jake. Any of you guys have any insights? Brian, Bob, Andrew, anything from you guys? Okay. Peter, moving towards agentic AI for solving aspects, including CET processes. Yeah, 100%. Well, hopefully some of this is helpful for you guys. Ian, things are moving quickly. Today, Microsoft announced Copilot code work. I may also be able to do much more while in the field. Yeah, 100%. That's it. And I wonder if, as these tools advance, and there's always going to be a leading edge, are we still going to continue to have these issues about duplication, having guardrails, consistency, all of that on that journey anyway. So yeah, absolutely. So what the guy said, look, if you're interested, I'd highly recommend you take this up. You can use that AI platform for one material risk end to end. And that loops back to the first thing. So if there's a risk you haven't yet done within your business, or a risk you're not sure about, Bob, need to change with the times or get left. Yeah, 100%. That applies to just about everyone, doesn't it? Thanks, Bob. Yeah, but certainly, so if there's a risk, you haven't yet bow tied, or you haven't done critical controls, you haven't done performance standards, or you might be or even if you just want to validate one, this free trial will let you pretty much go end to end, like I just showed. Upload your stuff, set your context, click the buttons, and see what unfolds. So there's a link there. I think I've got to put the link in the chat too. I'll see if I can put the link in the chat. I'll do that now. There's been a lot of uptake actually on this. I'm just going to copy this. I'll jump it in the chat because I recommend you do it. And even like the guys are still learning too. Like we've had some people go in and people go, well, wouldn't it be great if it could do this instead of this? So I've dropped that in the chat. Recommend you have a crack at that. Toby, the ability to review the entire performance down the line for duplication is a useful feature to leverage for effective critical control. Yeah, absolutely, mate. And also what we're building out too is a work management component to that too. So if we across 300 critical control verifications, have we just already designed in to overload particular roles from our cumulative? Because when we go control versus control base, we can't see that. So we're overlaying that work management component too, to then work out, well, how do we then streamline or reorganize or reallocate or again synergize that world. Thanks, Toby. That's a good one. What else I got? No, that's not the Bowtie Analysis Masterclass, but I had this question, I think it was someone on here. So if you want to do more, if you want to know, and I know Josh has attended this one, if you just, not so much on the AI, but what is the full end-to-end critical risk management framework? This is the first one, probably the last one I'm doing in 2026, where we pretty much go through the whole framework. And what I've seen, even in the context of AI, is who in the business has the knowledge base to be able to say to the AI, that's probably incorrect. And we're still going to need that. Well, my opinion, we're still going to need someone somewhere who can do that. So it just doesn't hallucinate by itself. And then we end up again in a place where we really don't want to be. So this is an example framework course where we pretty much cover the whole framework. What does good look like, and use the artifacts, which then also can flow back into the AI. And it's actually pretty interesting because 2 years ago when we did it, AI wasn't around to build things. You had to manually do it, where this you could probably just do the course and then go off and then build your end-to-end framework, which is what we're doing there. Thanks, Caitlin. That's good. I think hopefully Josh has the same thing. So there's that too. I don't have the link. I'll try and put it in the chat. Now we've got time for questions or comments. And again, there's a level I can't answer because it's beyond me. But does anyone have a question or a comment you want to drop in the chat? And while I'm waiting for someone to do that, I'll see if I can find that masterclass link and I'll put that in the chat as well. Anyone got a question or a chat? If not, I will then loop back because I think consultation was one of the things. Hang on, let me just put this in the chat here. All right, I'll drop that in the chat as well. No worries, Peter. Thank you. I didn't pay Peter to say that. All right. So there was a question on, so what are people's thoughts on consultation? Maybe rather than me, because we've got the question come up. What does consultation look like in the new world? Does anyone want to, you can even unmute. Who's played around with this? So we've got our I guess our regulatory environment and best practice tools say consult with the workforce to produce an outcome, produce a bow tie, potentially produce a performance standard and critical controls. We've got this magical, awesome tool now that could maybe produce a better outcome. How have people managed this? Tim, fill in the challenge. PCs.
Principal contractors. So
Gotcha.
we in that world, and I suppose there's a decision down here in New South Wales around Boral and directing their PC too much or getting, so it's really around, getting that flavour right and how much we interact and direct, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Have you solved it?
Not solved it. I think that at the end of the day, we need to have our own position, and then obviously work with the PCs to make sure their positions meet or exceed ours. So I think that's probably where, potentially we're not where we want to be. Making sure that we actually have positions and making it from an informed position seems to be where we're going, and then verifying in the field that it is effective. That's probably the actual physical felt part of the leadership that we need to do.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. Anyone else has some insights in this? How have you managed the consultation process? Workforce consultation with these, AI generated things or on the AI journey. Anyone have some insights sharing? I'm sure, Mr. Bryant, you must have dealt with this one probably a year ago. I'll put you on the spot.
Mate, for me, it's more any changes to questions, etc., have been done through consultation with the supervisors, and also the findings in our performance standard reviews we also discuss with the supervisors. We don't do anything in isolation, I guess, mate.
Yep. Love that. Thank you. Anyone else have a question or a comment there? So I had an interesting conversation with the Queensland mining regulator. It was coal, and it wasn't the chief inspector level, but not this particular conversation anyway. And I said, well, what does this mean for? I'll use an example for thank you, Caitlin. I'll use the example of a bow tie. Okay. So traditionally, what happens in an atypical Queensland mine site is, okay, we need to a bow tie on this particular topic. The safety team might front end load and prepare the bow tie, and then we have to take it to a cross section of people familiar with the task and the risk and the controls. Absolutely makes sense. Oftentimes, that cross section is we send the injured, the maimed, the person on work cover, the person on overtime, the apprentice, etc., etc., etc. So maybe not the best cross section, and within that group, they do the best they can to come up with the output. What we're seeing here is now we can use this tool that has the knowledge base of hundreds, thousands of operations. It can then return probably it will be a bow tie, providing the guardrails are in place and we contextualize it well enough. A bow tie way better than the cross section could ever produce. So then what does that now mean for consultation? Is it almost like what Josh you're describing? Is it more just change management? Is it just a confirmation? It's a tollgate review as opposed to a deep dive and pull things apart, because it's unlikely the deep dive will add any more value than what we've already got. And then this particular person in the regulator said, well, then the legislation itself has to play catch up here, and we know how long legislation might take. Anyway, that was an interesting one that I threw out there. Caitlin, interested to see what regulators might request in this space. Did you mandatory reference to use? Yeah, that's a really interesting one. And also, at some point, we know it's going to happen. Someone's going to get hurt, hopefully not badly, and there'll be AI somewhere produce something in that chain of events, and then it's going to create some interesting discussions. It's guaranteed to happen. Right. So I don't think there's any other questions in there. Look, I'm happy to stay on the line and keep riffing off that, so I've got time. But for those that need to go, thank you for joining. Hopefully this was helpful. Those 2 links are there in the chat. If you've registered to attend and we have your email address, you'll get a copy of this recording and also this slide pack. The MindGuard guys, look, they're great guys. Yeah, they've got a product they develop, but they're doing a lot of work in this space, certainly in heavy industry. So even if you've got just general questions, they can be a really good resource as well. So for those that need to go, thank you. Glad we didn't go over time. Have an awesome rest of your day. If you are staying on the line, then feel free to unmute and we can chat. So thanks, Jared. Thanks, Tim Fillin. Thanks, Mr. Bryant. Thanks, Darren. Who else we got? Thanks, Bob. See who's here, and I can even unmute. I can stop sharing. And I'll unpin myself. All right, who else is here? So we've still got a few people. No worries, Mr. Fitch, thank you. All right, so if anyone's staying on and want to say something, chat something, then just fire away. We have time now. I don't know, Adam, looks like you're unmuted. You might have been unmuted the whole time, mate. That's fine.
Hey, Christian, Tim here.
Yes,
the,
mate.
The other Tim.
Gotcha.
Hey, I just had one question just popped into my head. So where I am in the shipyard at this stage, it's a high SIMOPS environment.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on with a lot of activities with various vessels going on. So how do we stop? And we're not very, how would you put it, technologically sophisticated, I suppose, out there in the field. So when it comes into the verification process with something, the more AI-enabled critical risk management control management tool, how can we stop that becoming more just an administrative compliance tool but more verification tool?
Yeah. So let me just think. So the scenario is, you said that there's the critical risk literacy isn't necessarily there.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yep. And so how can an effective in-field verification be designed and implemented in a lower literacy level? Yeah, okay, got it. What we've done this in the past, mate, is we've designed our critical control verification question set, which is commensurate with the maturity of the business.
Yeah.
So let's say a BHP, their question set from falling from height will be very system orientated. Check the training needs analysis, check the warehouse, check the stock levels, check the felt leadership, blah, 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 blah. Whereas for some businesses which aren't on that journey, we have deliberately gone a frontline focused, simplified checklist. Now, checklists aren't great, obviously, but it can be as simple as, three criteria or two. So reduce the numbers of questions, simplify the questions or what we want to verify. One, it's and there's two parts, and I know you're in the hop world, so you would understand this because we can have the question set which is black and white, but if it's black, how do we check for what's the reason for the black? And so again, going full circle, we build in the guardrails such that the question set is very clear. Okay, go out and check 3 different locations and check for this, this, and this. The verification is classed as pass if this, and this is met. So we don't have they don't have to guess what the criteria is. We build in the question set what the criteria is. Get this evidence, of it. Take a photo or whatever. And if it's seen as a fail, this is what you do. Okay, talk to whoever about. Can you tell me about why this is the way it is? So check for understanding or check for that aspect. So I can say that from a manual perspective, what the guys are building in this critical risk AI platform is the verifications. We can almost do automated by it just takes a photo or a video and it does all the verification, that frontline focus stuff without even the person needing to do anything. We'll fill in the form and it'll do the prompt up. Hey, this is an issue. Ask about this. But that's down the track. I don't know if that helps, mate. Happy to talk more on that.
Yeah, it does. It does help. It's sort of given me a bit of a starting point, I suppose, just how to re-tackle this issue that I have with the workforce here, and just also even just management to that level of critical risk literacy, and also the whole verification side of things. And where I think, I can't remember, it was put before, like we've got principal contractors out there. We have the same process. We're a client. And we also have subcontractors as well. So, there's a huge, and plus, we've got defense in the mix, which is a whole different ball game. So,
that's it. And so another idea that comes there too is if through the critical risk checks coming in allows you to roll some stuff back, I've seen that as a really good win for the critical control verification process as well.
No, beautiful. I'll definitely give MindGuard a look at and see where we
do
can
it, mate. There. At least just have a crack, even just for one bow tie, just to play around with it and see how it goes.
No, appreciate it, Christian. I've got to go.
Too easy, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Tim, Toby. No worries, buddy. If you're going, who's here?
Yeah, we had enough soon. I think it would be really instructive when we get the first court case that involves maybe an incident, and there needs to be some legal interpretation of the boundaries around the use of AI in managing health and safety risk. I think that would be, I do foresee it to be a pushback on, you're responsible, you're the whether it's, what would we use in call again? SSE,
The SEC,
for the senior side executive. The laws were written for the senior side executive, where it says must ensure it's up to you whether you rely on whatever tool, but you must still be seen to be actively involved in managing that. But we can presume that, because also the other issue that we see is the growing dependency on AI as well. I mean, if it gets to a point where it's even able to help you make a better decision, what stops you for then not thinking properly
Yep.
when that decision is being made? So
Yep.
yeah, to that decision making process, that oversight that you expect, that human intervention potentially might get eroded when there is an overconfidence. But yeah, we'll never know until we get. I do think that the legal precedents would really structure the governance of its use in the long run, because that's always been the case. We always need something to happen, like a court case or some decision to strengthen everyone. So hopefully it's not going to be a bad one, but I don't see it moving away from that.
No, agree, mate. Totally agree. And so I guess for the first thing, that's why anything that I do with AI, there's always a human toll gate at the end or during. It never goes straight through without a human toll gate. So right now, effectively, if I think out loud how it's helping me and our clients is just an efficiency. It's a resourcing gain or resourcing reduction, essentially.
Yeah, so that resourcing, yeah, exactly. That resourcing reduction is, and that might be, that might be the approach, because again, where, I've seen a case where, you go to sites where they don't have, I know every site goes through that flux where you have so many people in the corporate side developing the framework, and then there's a cycle, and then that's, that depopulated, and then they send everyone to sites to support sites, or in the worst case, they move it to, well, sites, you're responsible for getting this done, whether you're going to recruit someone or not. And I guess in that resource reduction, oftentimes one of the biggest issues that sites go through is, hey, I don't really have enough time. I don't spend enough time with you to understand this. So it'll be very interesting how we're going to portray that gain. Is the gain going to be that you should be better educated when you interact with something like MindGuide than if you had an advisor sitting with you, or a risk business partner sitting with you, or like or some sort of senior risk advisor sitting with you. It'll be, because all of that will start coming to fore, not because of business justification, but it will be because there would be I think what will straighten that would be a court case to say, hey, if you depopulated your headcounts because you felt you had this, maybe you can justify it. It's a very, very interesting one. I don't know how that's gonna go.
Agree.
There's
We
no
will
plan.
see. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, mate.
But good stuff. Excellent.
All right. Thanks for joining us. I'll catch you next time.
Nice. Yeah, catch you next time.